Hello, everybody. This is Mike
and Beth,
and we are back once again with the Hey, Are You Still There podcast, which can now be found, I think, on 99.9% of podcast listening services worldwide. How about that, Beth?
sounds amazing.
Yeah, what, are you not wanting to have conversation today? I mean, this takes me back to the open of last week. Do we need to start talking before we hit record? Because you were a robot last week.
This always feels like awkward when we start because you're staring at me and making eye contact and it feels weird.
We're married. I always make eye contact with you.
I know, but like we're just sitting here staring at each other as we're like, hey, this is Mike and Beth. It just feels, I don't know, awkward. And
you say staring, I say longing.
oh, gazing into my
Yes,
eyes with
I'm
love.
longing into your eyes, like looking lovingly.
Yes,
at you.
exactly. That's what it is.
Just
okay.
shocked that I married up the way that I did.
Oh, that's, yes, I'm sure. That's
And I get it. You don't like looking at me.
And that's not what I said. I'm just like, I don't know. For people who have not done this before, it takes a little bit, I feel like, to get warmed up and to almost forget that you're talking into a microphone. You know, it just takes a few minutes. So I'm not just there yet, right in it.
There are so many things I could make this connection to.
I know. Let's move on because we don't want to make this podcast like a 7-hour event. It's not fair to our listeners.
And I want to keep it G to PG.
Gosh.
I did have a mom tell me that her and her daughter listen to us in the car.
Oh, that's sweet. How old's the daughter?
Young enough that the daughter doesn't care what we say.
Yeah.
She'd rather be listening to
she wishes
Wheels on the Bus.
I was going to say she wishes that we had voices like Bluey or something and talked with Australian accents and like in little sing-song voices. Yeah.
Right. And I had a friend of ours that is a pastor up in New Jersey message me last night and tell me he's listening to it. And
wow.
So it always I like hearing that. You asked last week. You said
New Jersey's practically like another country, you know? So like so that's that's kind of cool. Yeah. Another man of the cloth there. Yeah. He's listening to it, huh?
Who knew that there was pastors in New Jersey?
Yeah. Well, and that they would listen to this podcast.
It's incredible. And you asked last week, you said, if you're listening, let us know.
Yes, I did. And I continue to ask that because I just want to know who these people are. And I will say it has been kind of fun and surprising. Again, because, you know, social media or anything like that is weird in that you put stuff out there in the universe, but you have no idea what the algorithm's doing or who finds it or who picks it up. And the reason I'm talking about social media is that's probably one of the primary ways we initially got the word out about this podcast. And so it's just funny when you're like, oh my goodness, that's somebody I did a group work camp with, 10 years ago, or that's someone I went to high school with, or that's a person I met on a mission trip, I mean, it's just kind of neat to see. I don't know, because I guess I think about it just being like, all right, the few committed people at Re3 that like go to church with us, and then our parents or something. That's who I think about listening to it. I don't necessarily think about these other people who are listening. So it's kind of fun when people tell us where they're from or who they are.
And I had someone tell me this week, I haven't told you this, that we were just talking about whatever, and they said, have you recorded the new podcast for this week yet? And I said, no, we'll probably do that Friday. And in full disclosure, it's Friday.
Yeah.
And it'll be released tomorrow. And they said, I haven't listened to last week's yet. And he said, I passed it along to one of my friends to start listening to. And my friend was like, started talking to me about your podcast. And I said, wait, I haven't listened to the newest episode. Don't spoil it yet.
So we're like a TV show that like has cliffhangers.
I didn't know we had cliffhangers.
No spoilers. I mean, it's probably the great plant debate. They don't want to know.
We're going to get into the plants in a second.
Don't go out of order because it'll just mess up everything for you.
Yeah, somebody's listening to Christmas cards right now.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Why are they talking about this?
I know, yeah.
So it is Friday, and we are anxiously awaiting a snowflake.
Oh, yes, and I want one so bad.
It infuriates me. They canceled school here in our county in North Carolina on Tuesday because it snowed, last Saturday or something? I don't know, but it was like Everyone was out driving around. There was no reason to cancel school. And they preemptively canceled school today, and not one snowflake has fallen. And when I looked this morning, it said it wasn't going to start snowing now till 5 o'clock.
I do wish, you had that idea. Back in the day, they used to do early dismissal. And I feel like parents that work and things, I get it. That's really hard when you have an early dismissal, because then you're at work and you're like, oh my gosh, I've got to go get my kid. And they don't want to have buses out. Particularly in our county, we're in it's a county with a lot of city schools that the buses, you might be on the bus an hour, so even if you dismiss early, you got to think about an extra hour for that bus to get where it's going. But it would be neat if the school would normalize preemptively doing early dismissal instead of late arrival. And so, because then you could plan for it. And to me, that would have been a good thing to do in this case, is to last night, instead of saying, school's canceled, maybe saying, tomorrow school's going to be dismissed 2 hours early. This could change depending on the weather, could be, canceled completely, but, go ahead and do that. And then you're still given time to get everybody home. I don't know. I don't want to make it sound like that's an easy job, because I've read people in different groups. I'm in some groups of parents, with kids in our county, and some people are like, well, there was snow not snow, but ice where we were or something. And so I don't want to pretend like it's easy to make those choices, but that going ahead and pre-planning an early dismissal seems like that could be a good option sometimes, because right now our poor son, it's his first week back at high school, and
he's gone 2 days.
He's gone 2 days.
2 out of 5.
Yeah.
And there was literally only snow or ice on the ground for one.
Yeah, and it was
on Monday.
Yeah.
And even then, they might have been able to go back late,
yeah.
but or going later. I don't know. But you are more of a snow fan than I am.
Yes, I love a good snow.
Why?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I will tell you all the reasons.
We don't have
so
all
excited.
day.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short.
We got to keep this under an hour.
Okay, but now that I work at home, some part of this doesn't apply quite as much. But going back to when I was a kid, even, and then all the years that I've worked outside of the home, it was like the world stopped. Now, and I know this will not, so I'm sorry, people that are listening that live in Ohio or Kansas or whatever, you are probably like, what in the world? Our world doesn't stop. But in the South, because we're not as prepared, we don't have all the de-icer and snow plows, because even if our roads are okay, our parking lots and things may not be. So, we're just not as prepared for it. So for us, the moment that snow starts falling, the world sort of stops here in the South. And the other thing that happens is, if I love to go outside and bundle up while the snowflakes are falling and just go for a walk. And there's just something that feels magical. Like when you've got maybe 3 inches of accumulation, maybe the dog's with me, or I can convince one of the kids to walk, or even if I'm by myself, you're out walking in the middle of the road and maybe no one's been on that snow and you're the first person, and it's so quiet and it feels so clean and so pure, and it just feels beautiful. So I'm not talking about the blizzardy one we did have a few years ago. I tried to go out and walk, and I think this one might have been right at the beginning of COVID or whatever, or maybe right before COVID started, but it was snow hitting your face and you couldn't see, and it was super cold. So I'm not necessarily saying that, but I'm talking about these big fat snowflakes, the gentle snow. And then I love, I'm the adult that's always out there to sled with the kids. I always have been. It's some of the parents are like, oh, you can go sled if there's an adult out there. Well, you can count on me being the parent in the neighborhood that's going to go out there. Yes.
You're not 30 anymore. There's some risk now in you sledding.
I think I can handle sledding without. Oh, I can get up. I thought you meant hitting something or something and breaking something.
Whatever, yeah, breaking your leg or something.
No, there is not. And I have to say, my favorite memory of the snow, the best snow we had in our neighborhood, was that snow that year when some people, our friend Kel, who still lived in town, came over, and other random people met up on this massive hill, and we had neighbors that were from Michigan, and they pulled out the air mattress, and we would take the air mattress, and all the kids and people would just pile on the air mattress and go down the hill. That is one of my favorite memories ever, like living here and having the snow. But it's just, I just love the quiet stillness, and I love this idea of sort of everything stops, and it gives you, here's the other thing, to me that's probably as close to like a true Sabbath as like you can have, because everything stops, you have permission to stop. And I know I don't need permission to stop, but especially again back in the day when like everyone drove into work and everything, it was like, okay, everything's closed, everything stopped.
But don't you think that's changed now? Like,
I do. I think the online world, I mean,
yes.
You still work.
You still work.
Some of the schools are trying, I mean, in other counties are doing remote virtual learning or whatever.
And your kids are still going to be plugged into their stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not like it used to
unless
be.
the power goes off or whatever, which I don't like that, because I don't like not having electricity. But, and I like making homemade hot chocolate, on the stove. Like, it just, when you come in and you're cold and you've been out and you made a snowman. I like to make a snowman. That's fun. I just love all of those things. I could entertain myself for a very long time in the snow.
See, the poll question this week is going to be snow or no.
Oh.
Because I think some people are like you. They love a good snow.
Yes.
Other people are like me. If I went the rest of my life and it never snowed, I would be fine with that. Mm-hmm. I like going to a place where snow may be.
Right.
But I feel trapped. And maybe not so much now as I used to, but because of what we just talked about.
All the technology
online
and
stuff and all of that. But I get claustrophobic. Like, not that I would even go anywhere, but I want the ability that if I wanted to go out, I could go out.
Well, it's funny because sometimes it'll happen on a day when it's like you don't have anything planned, so you weren't going to go anywhere anyway. But then it's because the option to go has been taken away from you. You feel like you don't like it.
See, to me, and it's funny you mentioned that memory about sledding, and that was a fun time. Mm-hmm. My favorite was it's snow. Maybe I'm say 2018. It was a really healthy, good snow, and we all went up to the church.
Yes.
And you and the kids were sledding down the hill at church.
Yeah.
And me and a friend, we'll call him Ross.
Yeah.
And I think Tim Dixon was there.
Yes.
I think that we went and played disc golf in the snow, because at our church we have a disc golf course out back in the woods, and we played disc golf in the snow all bundled up, and it was a lot of fun. And that's something that Ross was even talking last night. He's like, I hope it snows. He's like, promise me that if we get 3 or 4 inches, we're going to go to church and play disc golf. And I promised him. I said, we'll do that.
And I don't like being on our road. I've ran from the church to our house. It's close enough. You can. I don't like it when there's a lot of traffic. But if you had to and you were really committed, and like we had so much you couldn't even get out of the driveway, you could walk to the church if you had to. And Ross could too.
2.3 miles.
Yeah, so you could do that. That's a good healthy walk there and back.
And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to trust my trusty Subaru.
Oh, yeah.
My
your
Subaru
all-wheel
Outback.
drive. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that car. And so it'll get me there.
I do. Can I say one thing about the Subaru?
Yeah.
Because we joke about it, but our son moved, and he's in Boone at App, and he is an adult, so we allowed him to, he told us he did send pictures of the place he was moving and stuff, but he made this decision on his own. Well, you haven't been yet, but Josh and I went to help him move, and it is up steep mountain, curvy inclines, holes in the road, and not holes, I don't think, because no one cares, but when you get a lot of snow and ice, it can take chunks out of your road. And I looked at it and I was like, am I going to get there? But I was in the Subaru and I had no issues getting up there. So I've got to say that Subaru, it can get you places you need to go. I'm a fan.
And look, we're not sponsored by Subaru. I might send them this.
Yes.
Sorry, this clip to see if they will sponsor us, but
especially since the Subaru practically drives itself too, and ours is a used one. I bet new ones are even better.
My Subaru Outback, 2019, so it's not even that. I mean, it's 5 years old.
Yeah,
is the most fun and my favorite car I have ever owned in my life.
Yeah.
I love my Subaru.
And we've had a lot of different cars. And we've had some fun cars and quirky cars and family cars. But, I mean, it does that little beep if you're going over the line or whatever. I mean, it does practically, I feel like, drive itself. It's got a great backup camera. Subaru should hear this because we are not, again, we get no money from Subaru. But if Subaru would like to give us, like, I don't know, let's say even last year's model of a Subaru. I mean, I'll take it and give an honest review.
Ours is a 2019. I'll take a 2020.
Oh, yeah, I would too.
I'm even thinking I'm going to get a used Subaru for Josh.
Yeah.
He's getting ready to start driving.
Yeah.
You know, like.
It feels very safe.
It does feel safe.
I like that about it too. Yeah. Anyway, but I will say your Subaru will probably get you there, and you're right about the snow. I know some people don't like it, but we have to clarify for the poll question too, for the overthinkers out there who are like, oh, well, if they say snow, do they mean snow up to my roof? Well, considering we've never had a snow that goes up to the top of your house in North Carolina in my lifetime, we're just talking about a normal snow, and we're not talking about ice. Black ice and ice, freezing rain, those are no-goes. No one wants that because it's dangerous.
And that's when you lose power, the power lines break, the trees fall
fell down our steps one time going to work.
And you think you can sled and you can't even go down our steps?
I was 29. I'd had Jacob. I mean, I remember this. I wasn't holding him, thank goodness. They were icy wooden steps, and so they were complete ice. So, yeah, I can sled. I know. You just wait. Everybody, if it snows, I'm going to be out there sledding.
I will get a video and put it up on our Facebook page.
Over an hour. Oh, you're going to do the sledding and then the trudging up the hill, like pulling the sled. Like, oh, yeah.
I'll get that.
Yeah.
So that's the poll question. Snow or no?
Yeah.
Speaking of poll questions, we keep having the plant thing pop back up. I mean, and not that it's like.
It is the best thing ever.
And not that, and this is one of those polls that's not argumentative. So people are just like, I'll put up a picture of the 1,000-piece Temu rack you had to make to put.
I need to say thank you. You are
all your plants on it, and people were commenting. I need that. And, our friend Jerry even said, I have that.
It's from Amazon, and I don't know. We don't get any payment for affiliate links. Maybe we should, but we can share the link.
But the picture's on the Facebook page. Yeah, you can see that. But we even got a video this morning.
Yes.
From a friend of ours that sent us a video.
What are you going to call him?
Well, I know what I want to call him because he sent a video of plants in his basement under what he calls a grow light. I know, it's such inspiration. I'm so excited. Now, I know for a fact this guy's been to Jamaica. Yeah. And he's getting ready to go back to Jamaica. So he sent us this video, and he's like, what do you think about this? And I said, I think you brought some plants back from Jamaica. Because it looked kind of like a jungle down there. A very specific jungle. It did not. Yes, it did. I was like, is this part of your retirement profit, like income right now? Is this what you're doing? Because this doesn't look legal. I thought it was inspiration. I thought you were going to say you were upset because as soon as he sent it, I was like, a grow light? This is expanding my potential so much because we don't have a basement, unfortunately, but we've got a garage that has never had a car parked in it because it's always had so much stuff. You want to expand your potential? He's expanding his mind with these plants that he's growing, and but they looked amazing, and they were not. A lot of them looked like beautiful, like yes, they were gorgeous. Yes, I don't know. I looked at, I was like, gosh, like that looked terrible. No, they didn't. They were beautiful. I would never allow that. And why? Because it just is. You don't like grow lights. I need to research these. I need to research because now I am like inspired, and so. You think about this. That sunroom is small. But if I can take that entire garage. No human needs that many plants. All right? Let me tell you something. No, but he made an excellent point. They were doing it. They didn't want their sunroom to be too cluttered. So they put some under the grow light in the basement. And so that's one of your complaints is about, I think, then what's the point in having plants if you hide them in the basement? No,
You could go, because you can trade them out and stuff, and some of them may be plants that can live outside a lot of the year. Like my mom does this.
So now we have like plant changes, like wardrobe changes.
Well, yeah,
spring,
based on
summer,
the season.
fall, winter.
Yeah, there are women who change the decorations in their house like almost every month. So it's like changing the plants. And see, like this, that is a great solution though for like somebody like my mom, because she would put them in her basement, but she doesn't have a grow light. But like she has all these plants.
You can't put them in your basement because your dad got a museum in your basement.
Yes, he does. Anyway,
if you want to see the largest collection of Zippo lighters in the world, just go to Tommy Mabe's house and ask for the museum tour. He has them in cases and
you've just given me an
stuff.
idea. It's like that time when we went to the Lunchbox Museum in Asheville, and I thought I should have a museum like that, or like the cat museum. That could be, he could like start charging admission.
He could. All those people going up to Hanging Rock could stop in his house and go take a tour.
And then we could sell food. Yeah, I mean, anyway.
The tour's only going to last 5 minutes.
But still. But back to the plants. I think that is a great idea of a way to like keep your plants healthy and happy, and to be able to have outdoor plants that then you could keep year to year. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, why do you care more about the health and happiness of plants than you do your husband?
Oh, gosh, here we go. We're not doing that.
And listen, here's what I'm saying. If you want to see a bunch of plants, go outdoors.
I do go outdoors, but it's winter.
And
there's
I'm telling you,
there's no leaves.
There's an amazing grow light outside.
The sun.
It's called the sun.
I knew you were going to say that. Well, the temperatures are too cold to sustainably.
Then don't grow those plants.
Oh, we're not going to do this. No one wants to hear any more about the plants, because I have been, primarily me, because right now I feel very validated by all the support I've gotten through these.
And you know what else you get validated in? Your stupid text.
I know. I just feel like #winning. That's what I want to put after everything. Like, I just feel like I'm winning at life.
Which, let me tell you a little side story real quick. We'll just pause this and we'll come back. So, I called Ross last night. Mm-hmm. You were going to a meeting. I called Ross. I said, hey, you want to play some board game arena? He said, shockingly, Ross said, well, I'm finishing up a game of chess. Which Ross told me afterwards, he's now up to 47,985 games. Oh. He's only 15 games away from 48,000 chess games.
Crazy.
And so, anyway, he said, let me finish this chess game and I'll call you when I'm done and we'll play BGA. So I'm sitting at the computer and I'm kind of at the bar and I'm doing some stuff, and I notice Ross starts calling me. So I answer it and have it on speakerphone immediately. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, hey man, what's up? And Ross goes, I win. And Maria's upstairs. She doesn't have a clue what this is even about. Uh-huh. Maria just dies laughing. And I was like, what? She was like, I am going to start answering the phone like that. I win. Because to her, it was so out of context. Yeah, I knew what he meant. Yes. But to a passerby, it was nonsense. Yeah. But it was a good laugh last night.
Well, it's just like, I win.
But that's what you can say.
I win. Yes.
Yeah, you're winning right now. And not even that it was a battle, but But here's my complaint with this poll question.
Because you have to have a complaint.
I do.
I love the way, too. Sometimes I think you would be like, because I'm the lawyer and risk averse, and I'm very good at identifying all the ways that you can die or a product can go wrong or whatever. You might say that I'm the one that's like a glass half empty, but you sure sound like quite the curmudgeon on everything now on these podcasts lately.
The older I get, I am the get off my lawn guy.
Yes, I was like, you're going to be that grumpy man that I'm like, what happened to you?
Just grumpy, yelling at kids, swishing in their mouth.
Please don't. We're not going to talk about that. We're not. No, I don't even want to think about it. Keep going.
So I asked the poll question on our Facebook page, and then I shared it on my personal page, and both got a lot of traction. Mm-hmm. When you text, do you text a paragraph or one line?
Yes.
And this is what I've determined about our audience. They can't follow directions. It was just a simple question, and maybe I didn't word it correctly, but 80% of them said, it depends, or sometimes short, sometimes long, blah, blah, blah. No, I guarantee you that if I went and looked at your phone, you text a certain way the majority
Probably
of the
like
time.
90% of the time.
Nobody is 50-50. But according to everyone who commented, it was like, well, it depends, blah, 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 blah. And
well, if it's a one-word answer, of course you would only do one line if it's like a yes or no or something. But if you're talking about conveying lots of information, most people are going to tend to go one way or the other.
And then you get some people, like our friend John, who said he took a paragraph to explain how he only does one line. And I'm like, well, John, you're lying. Right?
Obviously, he's in my camp. He does the paragraphs then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what I appreciated about Ross was Ross took 4 lines to explain his. So it was just like boom, 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 boom.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
And then I had Shelly. Shelly commented, and I thought this was a little backwards. She said, when I'm mad, I think this is what she said. When I'm mad, I type a lot. When I'm happy, I just text something short. I would think for me it's the opposite. Like, if I'm happy, I may just talk to text or type a bunch, but if I'm mad, it's going to be short.
No, I think I may be more like Shelly, because if I'm happy, I'm so in the moment that I might be like, I'm going to have to tell you about it later, or I want to tell you in person. I don't want to text it, or, like, because I'm in that moment savoring it. But, like, if I am mad, it's like, I need to get these thoughts out of my head.
You know what? You're right. Now that you say that, the longest texts I get from you are when you're yelling at me about
exactly. Yeah, because also when I'm happy, I don't need to justify why I'm happy. But when I'm angry, I tend to need at least a good 3-point argument on why I'm right. Because
and you do. I could probably go back, and there's a lot of mornings I open my text and it says, let me tell you why I was mad last night. And then you go into like,
part 1.
A textbook, essentially.
I will say that trend of not being able to follow directions. I teach a master's level course at 2 different ones. But I think that's a trend in not just our poll questions, but in society. That's one of my frustrations is like in teaching the course, like I would put directions. When I first started teaching, I might give an essay question and I would be like, answer this question. Well, then people would get off on these huge tangents. So then I even put in there, do not talk about XYZ. Only talk about A, because that's the only thing I care about, because that's what we talked about in this chapter, right? And then people would still put extra things. Or sometimes I would tell people, like, please make sure that when you write your response, you talk about A, B, and C. For full credit, you have to talk about A, you have to talk about B, and you have to talk about C. People would do it and only talk about A. So then I had to design a rubric that would have A, B, and C. So,
it sounds like you've got to do a lot of work for idiots.
But I'm just saying, like, it seems to be like a trend, because that's what I talk to my kids about too sometimes. Like, they might have like a fabulous response to something. It may be creative and ingenious, but if they didn't answer fully the question that was asked, so I will say to them sometimes, if they like are looking at something, I'm like, what does the rubric say? Did you answer every component? Because you can still be a genius and be great, but if you're not giving the answer to the component parts of the question, you're not going to get full credit. And maybe we should do that to penalize our listeners. We should grade them based on the poll question. I'm sorry, this poll question answer doesn't count because you didn't fully follow the directions.
This week when I do the snow or no, I'm going to say, is it A, or snow, or B, no?
And you don't get to elaborate.
There's no C, D, nothing.
I mean, you can then
choose one.
You can then support your answer, but you don't get to say, I'm choosing a different answer from those two.
Yeah, this is choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
I'm giving you 2 choices.
Yes. I did love choose your own adventure books when I was young.
Yeah.
I would like to write one now. Anyway.
Well, I had an adventure this past weekend. You were gone, and we're going to get into that here in a second. But we have a mutual friend, and it's actually Tim Dixon, who was on the show a few weeks ago, if you want to go back and listen to that podcast. His mom turned 65 Saturday. And so him and his wife, Wendy, threw a surprise birthday party for Karon.
Yeah.
Karon, I've known Karon as long as I've known Tim, so I'm going to say since 2007. The entire time that I've known Karon, she's been in a wheelchair. She has a form of muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
And so she's been in a wheelchair the whole time I've known her. I've never known her not in a wheelchair. But Karon has an amazing sense of humor.
Yes.
She can get dark. There's times I say stuff to her and people around are shocked that I will say something because it's usually some type of joke at Karen's expense.
Yes.
And everybody wants to handle Karon with like kid gloves, as they say, like, oh, we don't, and I'm like, no, she's tough, man. She's got a great sense of humor. And so what Tim and Wendy thought they would do is they did a surprise birthday party and the theme was toast or roast. And so they invited, there was probably 30 people there, and they had a catered meal, and it was in our church fellowship hall. Karon had no idea. She thought they were going out to eat at a nice steak restaurant, and then they pull in the church, and I don't know what they told her when they pulled in, but everybody was outside, and we were like, surprise, and Karen's immediately crying, and she's so touched. It was beautiful. We go to the fellowship hall, we're eating, and people are going, talking to her, and then Tim announces, hey, it's a toast or roast, so we've invited everybody to say nice things about you or to roast you. The relationship that I have with Karon, toast wasn't even on the table.
Yeah.
It was going to be a roast. I can roast.
I know.
So I spent a lot of time thinking about what I would say to Karon. I had a lot of jokes in my head, a lot of dark jokes.
Yeah.
And, if you watch a roast on Netflix or Comedy Central, the person getting roasted gets roasted, but so does other people in the room.
Yeah.
And I think they do that so it isn't all on that one person.
Yeah.
And so they pick out other people and make fun of them first and then get to the star of the show. I even had that in mind. I knew some of the people who were going to be there. I even had roast on them. And I know for a fact they're thin-skinned people.
Yeah.
So what I said would probably hurt their feelings.
Right.
And so that was my great balance is how mean do I get as a pastor?
Right.
And up there. And I wanted to gauge everybody, several couldn't wait till I got up there. They knew I was going to get up there and just crush Karon. And so they were like, you going first?
In a loving way.
Yeah, I guess.
Yes.
And are you going first? I'm like, no, I can't go first. I have to read the room.
Yeah.
Like, if everybody's toasting, I can't get up there.
And roast.
And I can still roast, but it's going to have to be more of a PG-13
right,
roast.
light, yeah.
And sure enough, that's what happened. There was like, people just got up and said nice things. And if they said things about Karon, it was just silly stuff like her love for trash TV or
how she doesn't like cheese.
She doesn't like cheese.
Yeah.
Like things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just kind of, and every time somebody would end, Tim would be like, all right, who's next? And every eye would kind of glance at me. So finally I was like, all right, let's do this. So I got up and I got to roast Karon in the middle of all these people. And it was a blast. And so I kept it pretty clean. I think probably my two, edgiest jokes is I talked about how Karon was the only woman at church who had her own private parking space.
Yes.
Like, insinuating her handicap parking space. And people kind of like laughed, but awkwardly laughed.
Yeah.
Like they thought it was funny. And then I said, what? I said, y'all can laugh. I said, I always know when Karon thinks I'm funny because her leg gets an erection. And because when she gets to laughing, her leg just sticks straight out. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. And everybody started laughing at that because they knew exactly what I was talking about. And then I told a story, and I'm going to tell the story now real quick, if that's all right. Karon and I and Tim, her son, used to go out to eat lunch every Wednesday. It was just our routine. And there was a couple of different restaurants that we would kind of hit. And we went to this one restaurant and we sat down, and we had a waitress we had never had before. And when she came over to take our order, she asked Tim what he wanted to drink. She asked me what I wanted to drink. And then she looked at Karon and then turned and looked at me and she said, what does she want to drink? And I ordered her whatever, sweet tea, whatever it was that she got. And the waitress walked away, and we all kind of looked at each other. And Karon was like, well, that was odd. And I was like, yeah. I was like, why didn't she just ask you? Like, does she think I'm your husband or something? Like, what? And then I said, you know what I think? I think she asked me because she saw you in a wheelchair. And she assumed, since you were physically disabled, you must also be mentally handicapped or disabled, right? And Karon was like, no. I was like, yeah, I think so. And I said, let's have a little fun. I said, when she comes back, let's just see if she asks me what you want to eat. Let's have a little fun with this. So Karon was already starting to laugh. And so the waitress comes back over. She brings us our drinks. What do you want to order? Tim orders. I order. And then sure enough, she looks at me and says, what would she like to eat? And I look at Karon, and I start doing these very exaggerated hand motions and mouth, and I'm saying, what do you want to eat? And I'm like acting like I'm eating a sandwich, or I've got a bowl of soup. Well, Karon starts laughing, and uncontrollably laughing. Her leg goes flying out. Her head goes flying back because she's laughing so hard, and all she did was make it look worse, like the waitress was right.
Yes.
And the waitress is like, what is happening? It looked like Karon was having a seizure. And and I just kept on and on because I was like, I'm going to make Karon laugh so hard that she falls out of the chair. And I just kept on. Finally, I just said, you know what? Here's what she'll eat. You know, we'll figure out a way to feed it to her. But, you know, just bring us this. So the waitress leaves, and we're all still laughing about it. And I said, when she gets back, what would be really funny is when you finish eating and she comes back over to bring the bill, just very calmly say, thank you, that meal was very good.
Yeah.
You know, and it would just blow that chick's mind.
She's going to be like, what just happened?
Well, Karon was like, all right, I'll do it. The waitress comes over, and I look at Karon, I give her this look. Karon can't say it because she's laughing like about the thought of it. Yeah. So then she brings us our bill, and Karon's like, and so that poor waitress, like,
she's just like, what just happened?
Yes. And so I told that story at the roast, and everybody was dying laughing, and it was a good memory. And I did say some nice things about Karon afterwards, but Karon, and the next day at church, Karon, I went over and, just hugged her and told her, I was like, man, it was fun last night. And she was like, it was the best birthday I've ever had in my life. Aww. And, she was like, I loved it. And that just speaks to, like, her as a person being thick-skinned, understanding that life in human terms hasn't dealt her a fair hand, I would say. But she can make fun of herself, and she can go along with it, and she had a great time. Which made me think, could Beth Giannopoulos handle a roast?
Nope. I already will tell you.
That was quick, Beth.
I know. But, because here's the thing. I feel like I get roasted all the time, but, like, just because the kids gang up on me, you gang up on me, we'll have a game night and people gang up on me. I think people have even made that comment about this podcast. Like, sometimes how it seems like you're kind of mean to me. So it's not... I guess I shouldn't say, let me rephrase that. Could I take it? Yes, because I feel very used to taking, like, the jokes and stuff like that. Would I enjoy it? No, because I'm very sensitive. And so even though, I do have a strong personality, at my core, I'm very sensitive. And so I don't think I would enjoy it, because I think at some point, I'm the type of person that you would say something even joking, and then I would start being like, oh my gosh, but is that what everybody thinks? Or maybe they're right. Or do I do that? Or is that funny? Or is that the perception I want people to have? I just think I would overthink it. And so I don't think I would enjoy it at all. So if that's your idea to surprise me for something, I will say don't do it.
I'll
that's
mark
not
that
a good
off my
idea.
list for your 51st birthday.
Yeah, party. Please don't. Yeah, no.
What about me? Do you think I could handle... Okay, let me back up.
Well, I hope you can, because if you dish it out, you need to be able to take it.
I knew you couldn't handle a roast. I knew that.
Yeah.
But I also know you would love a toast.
Yes, I would
love
some positive affirmations.
You love that.
Because, again, I work... Okay, my job is in the legal department. So typically people are coming to me with bad circumstances, and they already view lawyers as people that are going to tell them no or slow things down or prevent them from doing things. So it's hard, even if I do great work and I surprise them by helping them find a solution, it's still under typically not great scenarios and circumstances. So most of the time people aren't going to leave working with me and being like, whoa, that was just mind-blowing and creative and fun, just because of the fact scenario and the context. And then, as you know, I mean, it's getting a little better as the kids get older. When your kids are really little, they love you and think you're wonderful. But then you hit like preteen and teenage years. So in the family context and like even young adult, where you don't know anything. And so you feel like everything you do is either not very smart or not correct or, whatever. So I think you don't always get a lot of positive affirmation. And even in ministry, it's very rare that somebody comes back to us. I mean, we shared that one a few podcasts ago, but it's pretty rare that somebody comes back and says anything. I have had a few times like a parent tell me on behalf of their child that was in our youth group, hey, when you told someone that sometimes when you had issues praying, you would write out your prayers. That was life-changing for my kid. Or Mike talked about this one time in youth group. I mean, so every once in a while we get that. But I feel like more often we get the problems and the sadness. And that's kind of the way my job is. I get the bad stuff, but I'm not always there for the celebration and the good outcome, because it takes longer or you're just not in the room when that happens. And so that's why I would like the toast. I think it's harder to get positive affirmation from people.
Yeah. So what about me? Do you think I can handle the roast?
I think you could. Well, I think if you couldn't, then you have got to seriously tone back your roasting, because you can't dish out things and roast people if you can't take it yourself. Don't do to others what you can't take. So I think you could.
I would like to think I could. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I can.
Right.
I'm a big believer in Dr. Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Mm-hmm. And one of my my number 2 love language is words of affirmation.
Right. And a roast is the opposite of words of affirmation.
Yeah. And I don't ever get words of affirmation, hardly, and so I feel deficient in that.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm deficient in that, a roast would almost validate that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to tell you a story. I've never told anybody this, that there was a couple that used to come to our church, and they don't come there anymore, but we had a good relationship with them. And just, I don't know, I'm in the South, and I've tried really hard when I speak, and I speak all over the country, mm-hmm. to try to lose my Southern dialect.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I do, and a lot of times I'm somewhere, and they're like, where are you from? And I'll say, North Carolina. And they're like, yeah, but where did you grow up? And I'm like, North Carolina. And they're like, you don't sound like you're from North Carolina at all. Mm-hmm. Now, when I'm just in casual conversation, I think more of that Southern comes out. Yeah. But when I'm speaking, I try really hard to have a very plain, almost Midwestern, I guess you would call it, dialect and way to talk, just so it is not distracting,
right.
Or whatever. But there are times when I say certain things that aren't the way they should be said. And so I never thought about this, but I guess in my sermons, I would talk and be like, okay, and if you do this, and if you do that, blah, 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 blah. Well, this couple came up to me after church, and they were like, I'm sorry, every time you said, if we do this or if we do that, we just looked at each other and we're just laughing. And I was like, why? And they were like, it's if, not F. And like, F is a letter. If is the word.
Oh, it was just your pronunciation.
Right.
Yes.
I have thought about that every day for the rest of my life. I mean, that is in my head.
Yes.
Like when I get up to preach or to teach or to do any type of seminar or whatever, I literally am like, all right, if, not F.
Yes,
but that was just something that was casually mentioned to them.
Right.
They thought
it
was
was funny. Yeah, they weren't doing it to insult you or anything.
No, but to me, it was like, I literally have thought about that constantly since. And that was pre-COVID. That was probably 2017, maybe, you know? And so it's just like, so I don't know if I could, I would like to say I could handle a roast, but I can't even handle that, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's the same thing. I remember, because I didn't think about having a Southern accent growing up and of course it was a thick Southern accent, but where I grew up too, it was not just the accent. Sometimes it was the words you would use. And when I went to governor's school, that was the first time, like, there's people, and they're just all over North Carolina, not even all over the country. And people would say things to me about my thick accent. And I think we kind of judge like my level of intelligence based on that. And then I went to college, and I was at a private school, and there were people from all over, you know, the Northeast, from the Midwest, you know, from the West Coast, all over, international students. And so people would talk to me, and they would just, like, the Southern accent was so thick to them. And I remember, I think one of them had told me, like, Julia Roberts or somebody like that, I can't remember, had a Southern accent and put marbles or something in their mouth to try to talk to get rid of it. And I was like, well, maybe I need to try to, like, do that to get rid of it. And then I would also have words like sometimes instead of saying, like, press the elevator button, press the one, we would say mash the button, like where I go. And so people would be like, mash the button. Or I would say, we're going to make a picture instead of take a picture. And even now my friends joke about it. So I'm not saying like I'm carrying these terrible scars from like those things, but all of those things added up led to this serious case of insecurity, of feeling like, you know, already being from a rural small town, feeling insignificant. And I remember one time a person, this is a youth, and at this point I was in law school, and this was a student in our youth group that might have been in like 8th grade, right? And like you or somebody said, well, Beth was valedictorian of her high school. And then they said, well, it was just, and they said the name of the school, like, that's not saying anything. Like, that's not an accomplishment because you were at this really small rural high school, like it was nothing. And those things, and I'm thinking, you know, you always tell me consider the source, you know, like I should have been like, well, this is an 8th grade kid. What do they know about, you know, the work it takes to be valedictorian or whatever? But instead, those are the things I carried in my head of like, well, it probably isn't impressive that I was valedictorian because it was just a small school in a rural community, or, you know, or like because of my accent, I feel like when I meet people, if they comment on it, I feel like they automatically feel like I'm stupid, you know? And so you carry that, then that feeling of like, I have to prove it's different. So to your point, that I already knew I couldn't take a roast, but I think those little things that would be said in fun or offhanded comments would really like wound me. So
yeah. And I think,
and I wish they wouldn't. I don't think that's a good, I don't want to go through the world. Like, I'm not like we call it in law school, we call it an eggshell plaintiff. It's a person who's so sensitive, like anything will shatter the eggshell. I don't want to imply that I mean, I take jokes and stuff all the time, but like, I just don't want to willingly just say, come say hurtful thing or like funny things or whatever, make fun of me. I don't, that does not feel good.
Yeah. Like I tried to watch, I guess last year they did a roast of Tom Brady on Netflix, and it was a huge thing, right? And I'm not a Tom Brady fan, but I was like, I'll watch it because they were going to have some different celebrities. I made it through maybe 20% of it. I felt so bad for him.
Yeah.
And his ex-wife and his kids. I mean, just the things that were being said. I mean, he sat there with a smile on his face, but you could tell it was like the most miserable moment of his life.
Right.
And I felt bad. I mean, you know, and here's a guy that, what has he got to be bad? They'll feel bad about.
Exactly.
I mean, he's considered the greatest football player of all time.
Right.
Billionaire, you know, good looking. I mean, he has everything going for him. But you could tell even in that moment, he was feeling crushed.
Yeah.
And people were just unloading on him, you know.
I think the other thing is, like, that you have to be, I think the thing that's hard about roast, and I wasn't there, but the good thing was you were in a room of people that knew Karon intimately, but most of them also knew you and knew your relationship with Karon, so that's why they're looking like, when's Mike going to talk? If you had been doing that on television, like even now, there could be listeners that are like, oh my gosh, that just sounds cringy.
Mike's making fun of a 65-year-old in a wheelchair?
Yeah, there are people who may be like, that sounds awful, but they don't know your relationship with Karon, and they don't know Karon, and I think that's the other hard thing about any type of humor that can be dangerous. Like you and I know each other, we know each other's humor, so like somebody else might hear you even joking, or even like we've had this with our kids, like I won't go into detail, but we went on a trip one time and our kids were with other youth groups, and our son was saying some things to my daughter and her friends, like jokes, because I know this will shock some people, but my daughter, like me, is probably a pretty big feminist, and and so my son knows that it pushes her buttons to be like, oh, stop, go make me a sandwich, or say something funny like that to her. Well, we hear that. We know the context, and we know that that's not who he is at all. He's grown up in our household. Obviously, he respects women and the work and the contributions we make. But somebody on the outside hearing that, got offended on behalf of Maria. And I think that's the hard thing with humor, is so much of it is nuanced and about the relationship you have with the person, and if you don't understand that or have that, then people are offended.
I mean, I even see that like on mission trips. We have a good friend, Danielle, and Danielle's very abrasive at times, and but I've known Danielle for probably 20 years, and her and I have a relationship where I can say whatever I want to her, and she's not going to be offended. So there's times on the mission trip where she'll be complaining about something, and I'll just be like, Danielle, shut up and just go do the freaking work, And everyone's like, but Danielle's like, you shut up. What I mean? Like, it don't bother her at all.
Right.
But if someone else on that trip was to say that to her, she'd be fighting.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But we have that relationship.
Right.
And I think that's where a lot of people don't know when to draw the line. Like,
yes.
What
you can say to me is not what you can necessarily even say to our daughter, sometimes. Yeah.
You just can't step over the line with certain people. You got to know them and build that relationship.
Yeah.
And like I said, the roast worked for Karon because we did have that relationship.
Mm-hmm. And because she is a person who can take it, which says a lot too about not just her thick skin, but maybe her character, or more about her comfort with who she is. I mean, I think the problem for you and me is, even as old as we are now, we're probably way too concerned about what other people think about us.
Yeah.
Which is actually, I will throw in, one of the hesitations I have even about doing this podcast. I don't go back and ever listen to it, because every time I'm like, did we say something that's going to offend somebody? Did we say something that's going to hurt somebody's feelings? Did we say something, if you put yourself out there, you do worry about that. But then I'm like, at the same time, I'm like, well, I probably go through life and say something that hurts somebody's feelings or offends them often in life. You can't, again, that's going to happen in life. But I think that that's a struggle that I have, is I care a lot about what other people think.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a struggle for most people, I think, and the ones that say they don't care are probably lying, or they don't care because they've hardened themselves up so much, and so the good and the bad, neither one faces them, and I'm not sure that that's healthy either.
Yeah, and I would like to clarify too, I'm not saying too I want to go around and be callous and hurt people's feelings. I'm not saying that as much, but I'm talking about just caring about, does someone think I'm smart, or do they think I'm dumb? Does someone think that I'm funny, or do they think that I'm silly? Like that kind of caring what people think. That's the part that it takes a lot of work, I think, to let go of that, and just to and that's why part of this podcast is uncomfortable for me, because
Well, just the first 30
that.
seconds. I mean, the first 30 seconds of every podcast is uncomfortable.
No, I'm telling you, the entire podcast is uncomfortable. The after the podcast is uncomfortable, because right now we're comfortable and we're talking, and I'm almost forgetting that it's happening. But the after, I start to get this anxiety. Like, did we say anything wrong, or should we go edit it, or is somebody going to judge us, or somebody going to be offended?
Every episode.
I do that.
As soon as I hit stop,
I'm like,
Beth says,
I don't like that.
like, oh, are you think anybody would be offended that you said this or I said that? I'm like, no. I was like, first of all, nobody's listening to this thing.
Well, that's the other reason I think I'm shocked when people come to you and say that they're listening to it and enjoying it, because I'm just assuming, I'm forecasting this doom where everybody's going to listen to it and like bring it up like 20 years from now. Like, I can't believe back in 2025, Beth made this statement, and it might be something that I didn't even know I said, or that was problematic. I don't know. And I think I'm even more sensitive to this now, because we're in this culture that's so sensitive, where there are things that we say that we don't even know yet you're not supposed to say. Like, there's words and things that people say, and because the next generation may tell me, oh, Mom, you shouldn't say that. And I'm like, I shouldn't? I didn't even know, like that was a problem. I think that's the kind of stuff I'm afraid of too. The things that I don't even know are a problem yet, that 10 years down the road, somebody may listen to this and it was a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, good talk, Beth.
Yeah, sorry. Didn't mean to get off on that tangent.
No.
That was not in the notes or anything.
Well, I
sure.
wrote down, could Beth handle a roast?
Yeah.
So in my notes.
And we know that I couldn't. So there we go.
And I'm not sure I could either. So there you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So that won't be on our Big 12.
Yeah, never. And if anybody wants to surprise us with it, don't.
But we didn't get to this. I had this as I thought would be one of our main topics. A trip that you just took with Maria, which is one of your Big 12, is you wanted to do
a trip
that
with
you
each
stole
kid.
from me.
Yeah.
That you want to do a individual trip
trip
with each kid this year. And
Yeah.
you and Maria, during her college break, y'all went and spent a weekend in New York City.
Yeah.
We're going to save that. So we're going to circle back to that, and we're going to talk about that next podcast. And I want to hear all about New York City and trips and things like that. And we're going to talk about the dynamics of going on vacation, with
all your kids, or family and spouse, or
well, no, just like you're at a place now where you and Maria have such similar interests.
Yeah.
Y'all are able to go and do things that both of you enjoy.
Yes.
And y'all had a blast. You came home, and she came home happier than I've seen y'all after any trip y'all have ever taken together.
Yeah.
Ever. And this may have been the first trip that y'all have ever taken where I didn't get a text or phone call from one of you like, I'm ready to kill her. And so usually there's those moments, but I didn't get that at all.
Well, it's because we travel well together now. I shower at night and she showers in the morning. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
We're back to like what makes. No, I'm just kidding.
But yeah, so we want to hear all about that trip. But but we don't have. We're already at 57 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And so we went a long time.
Time flew.
Yeah, it did
Yeah.
fly. And so we want to unpack your trip to New York City with Maria yet. We'll save that for the next podcast.
And if people, I will throw in a tidbit though. If people are like, oh my gosh, how would you do that? Or how do you afford it? Well, I will say, if you want to go in January when it's not Christmas, not New Year's, this is the cheapest time ever to go to New York because it is frigid, cold. Also, Maria had given up her seats. She knew she wanted to do this trip, and so when she was making one of her trips back to Florida when she worked there, she gave up her seats to get the airline credit. So the flight was free, so we could do this whirlwind short trip. And which did, we can talk about all the stuff we did. But you're right, it was fun, and it was really neat to. I don't know, it's a different thing once your kids are much more adult and mature. It's a very different dynamic, and especially when they can independently go do some things and make decisions with you, it just feels really different.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
So you're just knocking stuff off your Big 12. I've knocked off one, the podcast.
Well, we talked about, though, I kind of blew it on the skiing, and if I don't get to ski this winter, Is that going to count that I made so much of
if
an
it
effort that I paid and
if
did
it
everything?
snows, you can go out there and sled, and that will count.
No, that doesn't count because I sled. I've already been sledding a lot, so that doesn't count. Anyway, do I get to make a plug? Can I advertise for our women's event?
Yeah, I put it on our podcast Facebook page, but go ahead and
Yeah,
plug if you're in the North Carolina area.
Yeah, if you're, or even not, you could, maybe you gave up seats on a flight and you want to fly in and meet us personally. So a few years ago, we started having, we call it a half-day women's retreat. It's going to run from 9 to 2. And this one's going to be January 25th. That's the Saturday, right? January 25th. And it's at Project Re3 Church in Kernersville. And it's $30. And so when people come in, you'll be greeted and you'll have some like light pastries and coffee. And then we're going to have some sessions with group discussions, some activities, reflections. Lunch will be provided. All the materials for the kind of craftsy activities will be provided. And any leftover money will go to our Hope Center that provides food, clothing, and counseling for people in our community that are in need. But I'm really excited about this one because each year when we come up with the topic, it's really kind of about whatever we, the women, feel like we're needing at that time. And one year, it was hope. And other years, it's been like one year it was gratitude. And this year, it's really about our stories and stories of, we're going to take a look in the book of Ruth at stories of 3 women in the book of Ruth and different paths they took and different choices they made. But it's about, being essentially, I guess, a co-author of our story with God. But also it's about the stories we tell ourselves that sometimes may or may not be true. The stories we tell others about who they are or about who we are. And about the impact, sometimes of even painful events and trauma and things, how those things can hurt us so much that we identify so much with that it becomes part of who we are or who we think we are. So, so I just wanted to give a plug for that.
All right, and I'll put the link, So, anyway, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Hey, Are You Still There podcast. You can check us out on heyareyoustillthere.com, on our Facebook page, or anywhere else. But thanks.
Thanks, everybody.